welcome to the Roar of the Lions UK podcast. This is the 2022 NFL Draft Day 2 recap show, looking ahead to Day 3 as well at the back end of this. My name's Matthew Turner, alongside co-hosts Ant, Steve and Tom, with special guest and writer for the show, Ash Soden as well. How's everyone doing, boys?
Still going.
Same, still going.
Bit tired.
Yeah, that sums it up, and I think by tonight I'm going to have a very, very long sleep before this show tomorrow, and then for that, the weekend's an absolute write-off at this point. But let's get straight to the draft, and what a crazy, crazy day it has been with, Ash might be able to tell us at some point today, but what seemed like a record number of trades for Day 2 of an NFL draft. It seemed like every other pick was a trade, teams moving up and down, left, right, and centre with so many players to choose from, and yet so many reaches. According to consensus big boards, there were consistent and big reaches all the way down. The Lions end up coming out of this one with Josh Paschal at 46 and Kirby Joseph at 97. And let's dig into those straight away. So Josh Paschal, defensive end out of Kentucky. What do you guys see from him? I'm going to go straight to Tom, because he identified Paschal as someone who had fringe first-round possibilities. So what do you see from him?
Yeah, this clearly isn't true, but I'm going to claim that the Lions were going to take him at 32, and therefore that would have come true had we not a trade up. But, we'll park that. He's a guy where there isn't loads of production, but he has all the tools and traits you would really want for a strong side defensive end. And especially as we start to move more to four-man sets, as we talked about, he's an explosive guy. He's physical. I think he's 270-ish pounds. And if you look at someone like an Austin Bryant or someone like that, or one of the almost heavier set Detroit Lions ends, we don't have lots of those guys. And even Aiden Hutchinson with his 6'7" frame is only 260. So the main thing you're getting with him is a really, really solid run defender, which is good because, as we talked about, the Lions struggled in the run game last year, and someone with clear pass rush upside. So, I understand that some players, some fans will think it's a reach. I think, as we saw, there were quite a few kind of reaches in inverted commas yesterday. So I'm happy about it. I'm sure we'll get into the discussion about a second investment at the edge position versus potentially other needs. But I think he's an exciting player. I'm not expecting him to be someone who comes and lights up the league in his rookie year, but that's kind of where the Lions are at right now. They're not looking for guys to come in completely pro-ready this year and become really kind of solid starters. They're looking for guys with real upside and traits who hopefully year 2 and 3, when we are back-to-back Super Bowl champions, are key contributors on that team.
So what I'm hearing is kind of, and I hate saying this name because of how much I get slated for this person, but he
Don't
seems
even say
like
it.
a Trey Flowers.
No.
Is that lazy
well
take,
done.
or is that sort of...
That's lazy. You've just cursed him. Well done. I hope you're happy.
Okay, so edge player, slightly heavier, run defense speciality.
No, he plays up and down the line. Trey Flowers played one position and played it badly. Paschal does a lot more than Flowers used to do.
They're different. I think both are versatile in their own ways. I don't think Trey Flowers' versatility really came through with the Lions, but did so more with the Patriots. But yeah, is it Paschal then? Have they confirmed that? Rather, I have no idea whether it's Paschal or Pascal or whatever. But I remember when we had this last time, and it was like Onwuzurike, Onwuzurike, etc., etc. But he's a guy who, like I was talking about, completely escaped me. The Houston. Who's the Houston guy?
Logan Hall.
Logan Hall. He was a guy I put for the Lions because of that kind of similar versatility. A guy who I thought was a strong side end in base formation, and then can slide inside and also play over a tackle if we place with 3-man fronts. That's exactly what I see with Paschal. So,
Ash, what about you? What have you seen from him?
I pretty much agree with Tom. So the whole versatile across the line. I remember seeing when we drafted him that he was one of the PFF's top run defenders, especially in the SEC, which is is the hardest conference in college football, going up against Georgia with the Georgia back James Cook, which the Bills took, Alabama, and he's one of the best run defenders. So he can come in day one for us, probably come in first and second down, defend the run, and then maybe either slide inside to then bring on Charles Harris or Julian Quara, since we know that Julian can't run defend to save his life, unfortunately. So he's got that sort of versatility to us. Trey Flowers, is a good comp for him, but I see him as like Trayvon Walker light. So everyone was discussing Trayvon Walker sort of similar terms, versatile across the line, can play both outside and inside, good against the run, pass rush upside. Pascal's the same for me, maybe a bit less athleticism, but more proven production in college since he's actually got the sacks and he's done it for longer than Walker has.
Yeah, I love that comp.
And you know a lot about Pascal, don't you?
I know a little bit. You know, we did. Me and Ryan did all the breakdowns on the edges and all that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm still just conflicted with the placement of the pick at the minute. I still don't really know what to think about it. Double dip in there. But as for the player himself, you know, he's got the pedigree, he's got the leadership examples that you want. He has the scheme versatility that we want here. You can kick him inside a bit more if you want to, although I wouldn't rather see him there. I would rather see him play off the edge. But you know, he's going to be right for us. You know, we like scheme diverse players who can do a little bit of everything, and he's going to be able to fit that. So, like I say, he's got the leadership qualities you want. He's got the diversity in his play you want. Yes, the production isn't really there at this moment in time, but as Tom said, you've got the attributes you can work with to mold him into the player you want him to be. And to be fair, he's coming into a room now where he doesn't have to play a lot of snaps every week at the minute. You can just train really hard with him to get him to where you want to be, and there's no pressure to just stick him in the lineup and hope he starts producing right away. So, as Tom said, it's probably going to be you're probably going to see him flash more in year 2, 3, etc. But in the long term, it'll be a signing that'll pay off for them.
Steve, any further thoughts?
So, kind of where I am is a bit where I was after the Levi pick last season. So really pleased with the first day, and I think we were all coming in super hyped. And then we spent like a bit of time and we were talking about, you know, it's got to be defense. But we were very much focusing on safety and linebacker, and we were effectively picking at 14. And we'd identified like a whole group of talented linebackers and safeties that could be there for us at 14. So I think when we saw the way that the board started to fall and people were making reaches and the Bears had picked Kyler Gordon, with the 39th and all that kind of stuff, all of a sudden that group just became, not just like a dream, but like really available. I think out of all the players we identified, only Jalen Petrie was off the board by the time we came out to pick. So just situationally, it just seemed like a really kind of like bum note in terms of like where they were picking when you've got all those safeties and all those linebackers on the board. But like, I guess you've just got to kind of rewind yourself from that. A bit like we all had to do with Levi last year is they've obviously studied this guy. They obviously see something in him where he can really contribute in terms of our defensive front end. They obviously absolutely want to win in the trenches. I trust Aaron Glenn, absolutely more than anyone else on the coaching staff. I would trust in Aaron Glenn, and this is obviously like his pick. So I think we've just got to go with it. And in terms of the athleticism of the player, I'm happy. The guy seems like an absolute stud in terms of just his attitude and also kind of like how he carries himself. I've just got a question, I guess, for the college guys. When he was in terms of like situationally, when he was playing against like the better teams, was he still able to produce? Because often in college football, a lot of the stats are a bit padded by playing against lesser teams. So how was he in like the big games?
Again, this is why I was a bit meh, because he wasn't one that really jumped off the page to me for the stuff that he did there. I mean, he's done fine. I think it's fine. But there's nothing that's made me sort of go, oh, wow, there's no sort of big career-defining game in there where you're like, oh, wow, this is incredible. But at the same time, you have to appreciate the level that there is between Kentucky and, the teams above them. It's like guys like Kingsley Enagbare, he plays for South Carolina, and he struggled in some of the big games, but it's him there on his own, and sort of similar with Pascal. I know I know Kentucky love their linemen and love building them strong, and they've got a lineage of creating good guys there. So, I would be happy with that, but I don't think the college production. I don't think you can look too much into there for anything that's going to give you like big vibes about him. But I think, but at the same time, I'm not using that as a thing against him. I think it's just a case of he will be trained. He will have he will have a specific scheme with us, and it will put him in the best position to succeed.
I think just very quickly, I think the other thing that just gives you a little bit of a nasty taste in your mouth is just then you see the Bears taking Brisker 2 picks later, and I was like, what have we? We've done it again. But we will see. This is one where I kind of need to be convinced, but I don't sound like a Packers fan now. I don't absolutely hate it. But yeah, it was a bit kind of off-piste from where I thought we were going.
I think that's fair. And just I've quickly pulled up his PFF draft guide page. His lowest graded games are 45.9 versus Northwestern, but then his second lowest graded game across his whole career, 65.2 against Vanderbilt and 66.6 against Tennessee. The really key things about that for me are, one, they're pretty solid grades for the most part, and two, all three of those lowest graded games are 2017. So we're talking about a guy whose lowest graded stuff was when he was a young guy, and he's stepped up since then. And even if you just look at his run defense snaps versus pass rush snaps, in 2019, 210 run defense, 154 pass rush. 2021, 256 run defense, so about the same, 389 pass rush. So he's a guy that they've clearly got more comfortable with, that he's developed his pass rush repertoire. And Kentucky, that's not a defensive line filled with talent. So if you're in the SEC, you're not going to run at him. You're not going to go at him. You're going to just kind of flip the plays and run it against other guys. So the production doesn't worry me as much. And it's not that he wasn't productive anyway. He had 18 tackles for loss just last year alone. And I guess, because all we have to go on is the media reports, so consensus boards and mock draft machines and things like that, it's really hard for us to know. It could be that loads of teams were in on this guy, right? And it was like, we have to go get him. And with all these reaches, you never know if behind the scenes, Cole Strange maybe not, because we had the Rams respond to that. But you never know with these guys whether you've got information that teams behind you are just going to take him. And I think when we did that trade in the first round, and we knew we weren't going to pick again until 97 unless we made a move, you take the guy who you want most, because you know that he's not going to be there at 97, I guess.
Just a couple. They have a history of going after the Kentucky linemen, though. I think there's just something they like about what they create there in terms of the guys. So I'm saying there, he's got better as he's gone along. They've schemed him better. He's earned the trust away. I think it's going to be exactly the same with us. Whereas Aiden's going to pretty much probably start straight away. Pascal will earn the trust here, and eventually he will have a good role here. So, I think it's going to be exactly the same there. But Kentucky create the guys tough. If you're going to have a Dan Campbell school, which he would love to pick from all the time because of the way they create the players, then Kentucky would probably be one of the ones right at the top of his list.
Just a few facts about Pascal, whatever his name is. So PFF credit him with a Power 5 leading run stop rate of 12.4%, and I believe that run stop rate is tackles credited with having stopped the play dead. So like kind of solo big man tackles. He is the best Power 5 run defender of them all. In terms of the athleticism, 9.81 on the RAS scale for the 10-yard split, 1.57 seconds for the 10-yard split. 30 on the bench, despite the fact that he is undersized at 6'2", 268. And also elite explosion grade, so 37.5-inch vert and 10'3" broad jump. So a guy that strength to power ratio is going to be really, really good. Kind of leverage wise, he's going to be really impressive just because he's got a huge amount of power, despite the fact that he is a bit smaller than your traditional kind of edge rushers there. He's also the only 3-time captain in program history, and he's also a cancer survivor. He was diagnosed with melanoma, I think they said, in 2017. which actually coincides with Tom talking about his worst grades in college. So, potentially he was dealing with a cancer diagnosis while his play was worse, which doesn't surprise anyone, I would imagine. So, really high hopes for this guy. Let's move on, because we've taken up a little bit of the show with him, and move on to the second pick of the day for the Lions, Kirby Joseph, the safety. Let's go straight to Ash to begin with. What do you make of that pick and of him as a player?
I absolutely love him. So I think it's been well aware, at least on the Discord and in mocks and stuff, that I've been calling for him at 97 for a bit, especially since the pick yesterday with taking Hutchinson and then trading up for Jameson Williams, because he could turn out to be a very good safety for us. Because at Illinois, he was just a playmaker. He's only just recently switched to position, I believe. So he's still learning. And yet he was a ball hawk. He made loads of tackles. I remember reading about the game against Illinois. I think it was one of the ones where they got blown out. He wasn't there for the first 2 drives. Touchdowns on both drives. They put him on every snap then, and suddenly the bleeding stops a bit. So he has that kind of ability to come in and sort of change the momentum of the game at a position of need first, because before this pick, Will Harris was our safety free. He was probably going to be a starter in our scheme. So now we've got someone who could turn out to be a lot better than Will Harris, and maybe even turn out to be a great running partner for Tracy Walker for the entirety of his contract and produce interceptions on the back end. I know that Eric loves him. I know that Riz loves him. And so I looked, and I fell in love as well. And now I can make Pokemon memes as well because of obviously Kirby and that. So it is Ash Ketchum talking about Kirby.
Hey, Steve, went with you last time, so let's talk with you now about Kirby Joseph. You wanted a safety.
Yeah, I mean, so I went to bed last night after the Pascal pick. So I woke up this morning with a feeling of great trepidation. And I'm like, okay, going to have a cup of tea and I'm going to turn on my laptop and I'm going to see what's happened. And all that was going through my mind is, I don't want us to do anything funky. I don't want to see a double dip, another edge rusher. I don't want to see, we've made a reach on a tight end, defense, and I want a safety. So when I opened up my laptop and I saw we'd picked Kirby Joseph, I was absolutely delighted. And I think maybe some of those misgivings from last night, I was like, okay, we're back on track. We're back on the program. I know that Anne and Ryan and Tom have all kind of like chatted up Kirby Joseph big time in terms of his ability. I know he had that half a season or maybe a full season at wide receiver, so we know he's got ball skills. And yeah, I was just massively relieved that the program was back on track when I got up.
How about the rest of you guys? What do you think about Kirby Joseph? Let's go to Ryan because he's just come on. In fact.
Yeah, I'm not turning the brightness up because I didn't have my breakfast or started any cooking yet. I'm quite tired, so I thought I'd pop in and show my face.
What do you reckon on Kirby Joseph?
I'm very happy.
Yeah?
I'm very happy. The FBS is only safety with 5 interceptions and 3 forced fumbles last year. The kid's like one of those Tuscan pigs for truffles for a football. Like say he gets in, he comes down in the box, he punches it out, he rips it out. He sometimes thinks too much about the ball, not enough about bringing the player down, so he can be dragged sometimes, but you can teach that. Like say he's got all the fundamentals. Like say he was one of the stalwarts on a poor Illinois side, relied very heavily on, but I think he'll fit really well. I said in that 3 safety package where you can put him and Tracy, cover 2, give him a half a field, or you can rotate 1, put Kirby deep, bring up Tracy, tell Deshaun Elliott, who can park in the box as a strong safety. So you can very easily work these 3 on the field at the same time if you want to. So I think Aaron Glenn, he's going to have fun. He's going to really like this guy.
What about the rest of you guys, Ant, Tom? Ant, thoughts on Kirby?
So yeah, length and ball skills. That's the key thing with him. Steve, don't smirk at that, but they're the 2 things with him which are really, really hyper impressive. There's a couple plays which you see on tape, and he's only really got 1 year of production, I believe, in that he was really a special teamer for a few years. So mild concern there. But there's just a couple plays for a guy who hasn't had that many reps. You just see like a natural feel for the game. And with safeties in general, I like to lean with more kind of cerebral IQ guys rather than just pure raw athletes. And there was a pick against Purdue, I think it was, in the red zone, where it's just all feel. So his eyes are on the quarterback, and I believe he just drops basically into a central zone. But all feel, makes play on the ball, tips the ball to himself, makes the pick, flips the field. It's that kind of stuff. Now, I think he was at the top of the second tier of guys, and actually I think he was the last of the second tier guys to go. So I think Nick Croft just went before, and there's a couple other guys who went ahead. JT Woods is more in this style of traditional kind of free safety. My only issue with Joseph is I'm not sure he's a perfect fit for the Lions. The reason being, I like him more as a traditional deep safety, maybe more cover 3 stuff. And that's where Tracy Walker has really excelled, right, as our predominant kind of free safety, deep safety. So I think it gives them a lot of flexibility in terms of rolling both those guys, because both will be great playing deep. He's not a guy, when we were talking about a Brisket, a Petrie, or someone like that, who's going to come up and thump people in the box and take a lot of reps down by the line. I just don't really see that. And it's not to say he can't. And whilst he's not a big guy, he's not a liability or anything like that when it comes to run defense. But I just don't think that's where he's best utilized. So again, he's probably a guy where you're going to get a load of special teams out of him. First year, he played gunner as well. So lots of stuff like that you love to see. I'm just interested to see what Aaron Glenn does with him. But fundamentally, he's a slightly raw playmaker who could be really, really exciting.
Yeah, I think Tom summed it up very well there for me. I'm sort of in the camp with him. With these players, when you only have 1 year of production, you have to be careful, because obviously you need to see whether they can continue that going forward. Same is said for Jameson Williams. He's a 1 year production guy as well. So you are taking a bit of a chance on these ones who haven't shown consistent production through college. But I mean, he's got all the attributes that you need. I mean, he reads the game very well, reads the quarterback very well. The processing is fine, but sometimes the reactions are a little slow. That will get better as he goes along. So I don't really have any issues there with that. But, I'm not just ready to crown him this sort of all-conquering, ball-hawking safety just yet on 1 year. He's taken a long time to be able to establish himself there. Obviously, he's done really, really well this year, and we're getting a guy who is on the up, but there's a lot of development that needs to be done with him as well, I think, before we see the real best out of him. I don't think it's going to be a case of he's just going to come in and renovate the safety room right away. Like Pascal, he's going to take a little bit of time to finesse and get to where you want him to. But I mean, he's got no better coaches than Aaron Glenn and Aubrey Pleasant. They're both defensive backs themselves. They've both played the game. He's got two of the best shooters possible. So I'm really just glad that we went safety in the end. I would have liked some guys higher, I'm not going to lie, but we've got one of the better development guys now who in the long term may pay off really well. So again, interested to see where we use him in the scheme here, because he's thought of as more of a developmental free safety. Tracy Walker plays there for us. That's where he's best at. So how are we going to utilize him? I don't know, but I'm looking forward to seeing how he develops, but I'm not expecting much to start with. And again, we need to see whether this run of production, which is small of his, can continue.
I mean, it's quite interesting to have a look down his college production. So he's only a 1 year guy, as Ant says, but he played DB the first 2 years when he did see the field on defense, then flipped to wide receiver for his junior year in the COVID year, and then flipped back to DB in the most recent season. So, he was seen as someone who potentially had good enough hands to play on the offensive side of the ball, which is maybe why he's regarded as a bit of a ball hawk. But the weirdest stat about him is that this is a guy who's 6'1", but his wingspan is 6'8". Like, how that he's not going to look like a normal human being. His hands are going to be touching the floor as he's running around. Like,
and it shows up as well, as in just in terms of forcing incompletions, getting hands on the ball. It's not all like his either pass defense or even picks to a degree. They're not things where it's an errant throw and it's into his chest and he's just kind of taking it and running. He's putting kind of he's putting his arm in between the ball. He's making reaches on things and things which other guys just can't do. So that gives him a bigger range in terms of from a breakup standpoint than a lot of other guys. It's what you see with someone like Iffy as well, who's obviously much taller, but has the length to really disrupt at the catch point. So, yeah. And the other thing is obviously we talked about Pascal and questions over value. I don't know from a consensus standpoint where he was at, but from a value standpoint and who was left on the board at the safety position, I don't think we can really ask for much more to get him at 97. I thought he was going to go more like early third, to be honest.
Wasn't Kirby Joseph a volleyball player? Isn't that where kind of like some of the athleticism comes from? I think I read somewhere in a draft profile.
I have to take your word for that.
I love that.
Oh, Spike. Let's move on to talk about the rest of the draft. Maybe kind of split this into two segments in terms of around the NFL, and we'll start in division and then have a look ahead to day 3 in the back end of the show. And if we start in division, Chicago, they ended up on day 2 taking Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker, Velus Jones. So Kyler Gordon at 39, Brisker at 48, Velus Jones at 71. What do we make of those picks, boys?
Well, they've completely ignored their biggest needs, which is fun. I think, the two big needs, when you invest in Justin Fields, you invest in your young quarterback, you need to protect said young quarterback. You need to give him a fighting chance, and they've done absolutely nothing to protect him. No more linemen in. That is a poor line. They lost one of the only decent guys they got in James Daniels to the Steelers. There's no depth there. They're going to struggle. He's going to get hit a lot this year. And at this point now, all they're going to get is probably development guys at this stage. So it is a bit odd that they didn't do that. Then in the receiving group, I really like Velus Jones. I know you don't. He's going to be their new Corradell Patterson type guy, maybe not to the same level, but he has the returning threat, which you've really got to watch out for because he is a hell of a returner. But as a receiver, he's good, but not great. And when they've only got Darnell Mooney leading that line, and then Velus Jones now is the wide receiver 2 for me on that thing, then I'm not worried about that either, especially against, our guys who are there in the backfield now. Obviously, they're trying to rebuild that defense up from where they were, but it just made more sense that you go and give weapons and protect your young quarterback and then look at your defense afterwards. So I think it's very questionable what they've done there. They passed up on some good receivers first up to go on the secondary guys, and they ended up having to pick mid-tier in the receivers instead. It didn't make a lot of sense to me.
I think the Brisker pick pissed me off. And they've already got a really good safety in Eddie Jackson. So the thought of Jackson and Brisker together is a pretty decent combination, I think. I'm not sure about Kyler Gordon. I didn't really have him in my top 6 or 7 corners. I think the Velus Jones pick is just a bit of a reach because, as the Packers guy said so wonderfully yesterday, the wide receivers are all going, the wide receivers have gone. And, the Bears have kind of been left with a guy that there's, a lot of downside to as well as up. So it's kind of classic Bears territory, really, isn't it? A bit of good and then undermined by some daft stuff.
Jones, I really couldn't work out because I didn't watch him last season. So until we got to the draft season, I guess. And at the Senior Bowl, I thought he looked crisp. He looked explosive, nice hands. And then you go back to tape and he just doesn't look like he really knows what he's doing at the position. And then you then couple that with the fact I don't know how old he is, but he's is he going to be 24 or 25 going into the season? I mean, it's just an odd combination of a guy with kind of legit track speed, who's got decent enough ball skills and shows glimpses, especially in practice, of being nuanced, polished, etc. And then you turn on the tape and it's just not there. So I can't get my head around him as to why that's the case. And I think it's a concern, right? If you're the Bears and he's had 6 years at college and still looks raw. To be honest, I like him as a player, and I don't even think it's that bad a reach. I just can't work him out.
maybe we'll move it on to Minnesota then, and I'll go to Ryan and Ash for these ones. Picks so far overall: Lewis Seen at 32, Andrew Booth Jr. at 42, Ed Ingram 59, and Brian Asamoah at 66. So mostly defense, linebacker, a corner, a safety, and a guard. What are you making of that class so far?
I like it. Like I said, Ed Ingram I thought was a reach. Like I said, Parnham was still on the board. You still had guys that could play guard, like say Lucas, Donovan West. He's played guard as well throughout his career. They were higher on people's boards than Ed Ingram, who was a long time star at LSU. So they have gone for someone that's experienced. I think he made a good career 31 starts, which is fine. The strategy is more confusing than the players because like I said, they traded back with the rivals of division multiple times and then traded back up. So that they've been a bit higgledy-piggledy, but they have addressed needs. Like say they lost, was it Anthony Smith a few years ago? Their safeties aren't getting any younger, so it was time to invest in it and get a bit of juice. Lewis Seen is what really upset me because I would really, really have liked him. He's someone I did not want to see on a rival team because he is a very versatile kind of guy. Andrew Booth Jr., like I say, they've not had that solid, trustable, dependable outside corner since Xavier Rhodes left. They've recycled through corners in every draft. Let's say, unfortunately, they had the incident with Gladney. It's now been cleared, so there's a path back to him. But they have gone and addressed needs. Asamoah could be a nice fit. He's also one of those guys that you move around. I believe he took quite a few snaps at slot corner as well when asked at Oklahoma. So he's a bit of an undersized linebacker, but he's speedy. He's able to shift side to side. He's able to come up and meet holes, but he isn't the run stuffer or the coverage guy that you have for. So he's raw, but there's something there to work with. So I think they've done pretty well to say they've been jumping up and down, and they did help us. Like I say, they've given us opportunities to take guys, which I found a little odd, but the players they've taken fairly well. If it was the Lions draft, I'd be fairly happy with it. Like I said, I wouldn't really complain if we had that draft.
Ash?
Yeah, I completely agree, especially on that last point, because obviously this is a class where it's going to get compared to ours, because obviously of our trade up with the Vikings to then take Jameson Williams, there's going to be that comparison to division now. So it's going to be like, which got the better side, Jameson Williams or Lewis Seen, Booth, and Brian Asamoah. And I remember putting in the WhatsApp and I think the Discord when it first happened that actually it could be very close. I could be persuaded into either side. Obviously, I side with Jameson Williams because you have to home kind of thing. But it was a very good haul for them. Though I do agree the whole trade, they kept trading back because their new GM is supposed to be this big analytics guy. And obviously the analytics hated our trade up despite the massive analytics sides, PFF, both their podcasts saying they loved it, which is a bit confusing. And then they obviously then trade up again to get a guard, which seems to go against the whole analytics thing, because obviously analytics hate trading up and they think that guard's a low value position. So that sort of confused me a bit. But overall, I think it is a good haul for them and it does fill quite a few needs.
What about the rest of you guys? What are you feeling on the Vikings?
This might be showing my age now, but it reminds me of an old Morecambe and Wise sketch where he's playing the piano and he says up all the right notes, but not necessarily in the right order. And I think that kind of sums up this draft because, you know, in isolation, they're all really good picks. But I just think because of the way that they've drafted and traded around, I think they've done themselves out of value. I think they could have maybe squeezed in maybe even like an extra pick or maybe like upgraded Ingram to like a slightly better lineman. So I think it's just a way that they've kind of like managed the draft has let them down a bit. But in terms of the actual picks, I think it's like sneaky good.
Yeah, I completely agree. If you have a look at the trades, as it was said before, Jameson Williams and Josh Pascal versus Andrew Booth, Brian Asamoah, Lewis Seen, it's got to be close. the one thing you can say is that the Vikings are spreading their risk by having 3 guys. If Jameson Williams has a reoccurrence of the ACL injury, like that toasts the trade. Like, the risk for us is higher than it is for them, but the reward is potentially higher too, because if Jameson Williams goes off and has some sort of Justin Jefferson rookie season, then we're laughing. So, I don't think that the Vikings really have that sort of volatility on the table. So there we go, really. Let's look at the last team in the division, Green Bay. I know that their fans are crying right now, but as I read this out, my heart sinks the longer I go into it. Quay Walker at 22, the linebacker. Devontae Wyatt, defensive tackle at 28. Christian Watson, wide receiver at 34. Sean Ryan, tackle at 92. If you told me that the Packers were going to come out with potentially the best linebacker, was talked about as the best linebacker in the draft, the best defensive tackle for a lot of people in the draft, the guy potentially with the highest upside and wide receiver 1 and NFL potential at wide receiver, and then a swing tackle, I'd tell you they had a good draft. And I feel like they have had a good draft sneakily. Their fans will be crying. They haven't addressed their biggest needs at their highest value positions. Kind of what Steve was saying about Minnesota, right notes, wrong order. But taking a step back, this feels sneaky good too. What about the rest of you guys?
They're leaving the rest of the division behind. As much as I hate to say it, I disagree with you there. I think they have hit the highest needs. I mean, I said one of the biggest needs beforehand was finding Kenny Clark a running mate on the interior of that defensive line, and now they're pairing Devontae Wyatt with him. That's going to be horrible to come up against there. Kenny Clark's the best nose tackle in football by some distance, and now you're pairing him with a guy who was highly productive on one of the best Georgia defenses, one of the best college defenses of all time. And that interior mixed with Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith on the edge is that's a fearsome front line that they're going to be able to deploy it. I mean, I know Key Walker's, what is he going to be there? But I mean, they've got Devontae Campbell and they can afford to bed him in a little bit. They've been so at linebacker for years now, and it's not really bothered them. And like you say, if he reaches his upside, then all of a sudden you've got Key Walker and Devontae Campbell you're trying to get through, if you're able to get through that defensive line, which is even worse. They've got a great receiver potentially. I mean, hopefully, as far as I'm concerned now, I just hope he drops all the balls like he did in college and he struggles like hell there, like Amari Rodgers did last year. But again, if it works, they're able to make stars out of anybody as wide receivers. They had Alan Lazard, Valdez Scantling, even Equinemius a little bit there. Guys who on any other team would be a wide receiver 5, and they've got them playing like wide receiver 1s. And then the same with the offensive line with the UCLA tackle. If he went to any other team, I wouldn't be bothered. I mean, that UCLA line was really good this year. Zach Charbonnet ran all over the Pac-12, and he was a big reason why that happened. He's great in the run game, but Green Bay creates stars out of everybody on their offensive line. I don't know how they do it, but anyone can come in. They were down to their 3rd left tackle last year, and Aaron Neiman looked like David Bakhtiari. Elton Jenkins is the best diverse offensive lineman in the entirety of the NFL again. It's crazy how they get these guys to work, and now they've got another run mauler in there with them. So, yeah, they're leaving the rest of us behind, despite the losses there. They've just gotten even stronger, and I think the gulf is as big as it's been for a while.
Yeah, you touch on it nicely there. They're probably the best drafting offensive line. Wait, how am I going to phrase this? I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They're probably the best drafting team when it comes to offensive line. I think it just shows how fickle we all are as fans, especially when you do these things kind of in the moment. But if you kind of go alternate universe and they've taken Devontae Wyatt at 28, Christian Watson at Devontae Wyatt at 22, Watson at 28, and Quay Walker at 34, and therefore your break at the end of day one is we got Devontae Wyatt and Christian Watson, fans would probably have been like, what a draft, I can't believe we've done this, incredible. They've got the same players, right? And Packers drafts over the last 5 or 6 years, not that they've even drafted badly, but I haven't been hugely concerned about them, I would say. Guys like Stokes at the end of one, it's not the kind of guy where I'm like, oh, I'm gutted we missed out on him. I'm gutted he's in our division or any of their guys. This is the first time you look at a list of players and you're like, yeah, I mean, I'd like all three of those on our team. So, yeah, concerning, I would say. But then again, their timeline is very different to ours. So,
Yes.
I think. Go on.
I was going to say, obviously, after day one, I follow a Packers fan on YouTube because sometimes he does have some good takes. And I watched his video saying how the Packers screwed up the draft again. And it was a clip of his live stream because he does what we do over the draft. And he actually made a kind of decent point to why he didn't like the Quay Walker pick. So, because Green Bay kept neglecting linebacker for years and years, they actually changed their scheme so they pretty much only run with one linebacker at a time. So their third safety had, I think, 50 more slaps than their linebacker two. So I think that's why Packers fans started freaking out when they took Quay Walker when they did, is because it's not as much of a need in their scheme than obviously wide receiver is, than a defensive lineman is, than even a third safety is. So the Packers fan even said if it was Daxton Hill, then he would have loved it because it was a top 10 player for his on his board that was in a position of need that would actually play a lot of snaps for them. While Quay Walker, while being a good linebacker, he said that because of the positional value and how it's used in the scheme, that's a second to third round player for him. So that's why they were freaking out with Quay Walker. It wasn't because they thought he was a bad player necessarily. I think the Packers fan said he thinks he's a solid linebacker that with Coach Andre Campbell to such a big contract.
And without knowing their scheme particularly well, I probably should.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's similar to how the Rams used to use it, right? In that they basically had one mic, but then they'd stand guys up on the line.
Yeah.
And obviously, traditionally, that's what the Packers have done with more edge guys. I think Walker does have a little bit more versatility. He's not really a traditional mic, and he wasn't really used that way at Georgia either. So I wonder if to disrupt against tight ends and offensive line rather than someone who's going to play 6 yards off and read off their guys up front. But we'll just have to wait and see.
I find that an odd comment, though, because linebacker's been their Achilles heel for years. You know, he goes that they don't use them in scheme, but they've just never had any good ones there until Devondre Campbell came. They'd gone through a myriad of nobodies. And, you know, when they got blown out by the 49ers in the championship games, because they couldn't stop the run, they had no one at linebacker to help come up and stop the run. You know, it's been a huge problem for years. So I don't get why he says it's a, you know, they don't use their linebackers very much.
He said
it's because they've not got good linebackers.
Yeah.
It's not a case of, you know, their third safety is probably better than their second linebacker, probably by some distance.
Probably.
So I think that's
probably,
why
yeah. Yeah, you can't forget they once had a consistent tackle leader, Blake Martinez, in their defense. So but though, to be fair, he does actually hate Blake Martinez, and when he left for the Giants, he had a small party.
It is quite likely to lead you to get banned from using the computers at your local library and possibly appear on a register somewhere. So just be careful with that. Just want to give you the heads up there.
Fair enough. Thank you for the heads up.
We'll obviously break all of this down a lot more when it comes to our draft recap show, kind of as a weekly normal show, which we'll probably do not Monday, I don't think, but maybe next week. But maybe let's have a look at the rest of the draft very quickly before looking ahead to tomorrow. And I wonder if you guys just maybe want to talk about the sort of picks that you absolutely love, reaches you don't understand, and if you just want to lump New England into all of that, then that's absolutely fine. But, you know, some kind of hot take or sort of very high-level takeaways from what happened last night.
Wish we had a 4th round pick.
Yeah. Well, that would be nice.
The Giants don't know how to draft receivers. I'd say that's a pretty big pick away there. That was Kadarius Toney last year. Then they gave Kenny Golladay 18 million, and then they went Wandale Robinson in the 40s when there's lots of other great guys there. That is confusing. I don't know who is their wide receivers coach there, who's advising them. I mean, don't get me wrong, Wandale Robinson could be all right, but there were so many more better players on the table at that point, and that was a weird thing because so many receivers went early. A lot of teams started panicking and started trying to be clever, and none more so than our ex-head coach, who tried to be incredibly clever when they drafted Tyquan Thornton about 150
He is a
spots,
rocket engineer, you know.
about 150 spots too early for Tyquan Thornton. That's what happens when players start going off the board and position groups that were suddenly stacked suddenly start getting really thin. Teams panic badly, and this was not a good draft for some teams with receivers, but the Giants especially. That was very poor from them.
Two things for me. One, I'm so happy I'm not a Cowboys fan. The reason being, as someone who loves the draft, to see them continually take guys with character issues would just be so demoralizing, like personally as a fan, when you want to like see these picks, root for these guys, get excited by them. It makes me happy I don't have to deal with that, to be honest. The other thing is we talk about the aggression of Brad Holmes, and I think in general we've been pretty positive over that as a group. I think the Baltimore Ravens are a brilliant example because coming into the draft, you always say the Ravens, how do they always end up with these guys? And they've just shown patience throughout this whole process. And the guys they've got, I mean, it's pretty wild. Kyle Hamilton at 14, Linderbaum at 25, David Ajabo at 45, Travis Jones at 76. And it's just like, we can say it again, how do they let this happen? But it's patience, and it's just picking the best guys there. I know that Ajabo was we had split feelings with him across the board. I think from a fit standpoint, it couldn't be any better. I think him at the Ravens, let's hope he gets healthy, and who knows if he will or if he'll turn into something, but I'd say he's got as better chance as any team to reach his potential there. And when you now have Travis Jones there as well in that line, and obviously Kyle Hamilton, I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches, really.
And he's in a team where he doesn't have to contribute right away. He's got Calais Campbell, who's one of the best role models he could possibly get. He's still playing at 36, 37. Going to show him the longevity of the game, how not to get hurt, etc. And when he comes in, he's on a stacked team. That defensive line at Baltimore now is just straight up unfair. Some of the guys they've got on there, they have drafted incredibly well, and I think by far and away they've won the draft so far after the first 2 days, and it's not even close really anymore. So as much as I hated Travis going there, he's gonna thrive. He's in a division where they're quite run heavy there. He's going to be an absolute asset for them when it comes to playing against the run. So yeah, I'm happy there. But there were some really good fits that I enjoyed. Sky Moore's going to do really well in Kansas City. I think that's the exact perfect system for him there again. They can sort of bed him in a little bit, and he is going to be a hell of a receiver, I think, there for them going forward. So I love the fit there for him. So yeah, good luck to him.
Just want to thank Fly Odd Condor for the follow on Twitch. Little quiz question for you guys then. There are 4 teams so far whose entire draft class, per the consensus board I built, are all value picks. Can you name the teams that have drafted well by that metric?
Ravens will be 1.
Ravens are 1, which is why I went there. 4 picks, all of them for value.
See, I'd say Jets, although we disagreed with what they did yesterday. Breece Hall was still at a position where he would be value, as would Rucker, even though we're not high on him. And the first round picks were fantastic.
They gained.
Gonna go on.
No, I'll just say they gained 20 places overall, but Wilson, Gardner, and Hall were all slight reaches by that metric.
Oh well, the Panthers will be on there then, because they've picked like 2 guys.
I'm going to go with the Chiefs.
Chiefs, yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Chiefs had 1 reach, Brian Cook, 46 places, but the rest of them, you're correct. What did you say? Ant, you said?
Panthers.
Icky and
they've
Corral,
had-
yeah.
They've had a tackle and the quarterback's not a reach for sure.
Yes,
and tackle
yes, you're right. Sorry, that's the 5th team actually that I missed. Yes, you're right.
Dolphins, because they've only had one pick and it was Channing Tindall.
Dolphins, yep, 24 places gained.
Gotta think of who
What division?
who the hell did the Rams pick?
Rams, bit of Logan Bruss. I think he was.
Oh, that's a reach.
That's a reach, yeah. I want to say Cardinals, maybe.
Cardinals.
And unless you factor in the Hollywood Brown trade, in which case they definitely reached on that.
Cam Thomas was a
Yeah.
9-place reach. Myjai Sanders a 2-place reach. So
Interesting.
very
Oh,
close.
God.
But there we go.
Philadelphia?
Thomas and Sanders. Bloody hell.
Philadelphia. Cam Jurgens was a big reach according to that metric, but Nakobe Dean obviously fell a long way, and that was good for them. So there or thereabouts.
Raiders only picked once, and Parham was a decent acquisition.
Raiders are one of them. 10 places gained on him.
Browns?
No, the Browns reached big again. Who the hell was it?
Yeah,
who they
Browns
reached
took
on?
Alex Wright and Martin Emerson, both 60
Yeah.
place
Yeah.
reaches.
I was going off. Oh, come on, Bill.
Martin Emerson was.
Yeah.
That was a horrible pick.
For the
Yeah.
record, Alex Wright, in terms of hot take, I was trying to think of a reach that I liked the most. I actually really like that pick as a guy who's gone ahead of his draft status. He's one of the few I'd bet on as performing to that status.
The 49ers managed the worst reach of them all, which
Yeah.
was Tyrion Davis-Price.
Yes.
So you say
That was horrendous. Look at the running backs still on the board. He was like literally at the bottom of my running back list. That's not if you're including the really, really small school guys or the ones who are just down. He was right at the bottom. And
above Corbin, below Corbin.
yeah,
What, you
that
hated
says
it?
every. Oh
Yeah.
shit. I was about to make a joke, but you're here, aren't you? So.
I'm making the joke for you. I'm making a joke for you. Corbin
Yeah.
is bad.
Yeah, that was horrible. But
Mm.
who am I to question their knowledge of running backs? Because they seem to make good running
Yeah.
backs. They did it with Elijah Mitchell last year, but I don't get what they're seeing on this one. I really, really don't.
CJ Craig says that the Giants had a great day one in his opinion. You're absolutely right, they did.
Yeah.
Thibodeau and Neal were both value picks, but day two, Azudu, Flott, and Robinson were massive reaches, so they're not on this list. Lions Rumble's in the
Colts?
house, and
Zudu
he
must
says,
have been 80 places or something like that. That was huge.
yeah, it was huge. Rumble says New Orleans. Alontae Taylor was a big reach, but Olave and Penning were about value. One more
I
team.
don't think Taylor was a reach. I said this on
Colts?
stream. I don't think Taylor's a reach at all.
No, well, it's just by this metric though. Colts are
They took
somewhere.
Jelani Woods. That was a reach.
Jelani
They took
Woods and
Jelani
Alec Pierce both reaches by this metric. Ryman and Cross were both value picks though. One team
What?
in the AFC West to get.
Rodgers.
Who did the Raiders take?
Already
Raiders
said
already
Raiders,
mentioned by Ant. They
Right,
took
I
Parham.
was going to say Broncos. 'cause
Yeah,
they-
so it's the only other
Yeah.
team not
Benito-
mentioned. So yeah, Dolchich and
Benito and
Benito
Dolchich,
are both
yeah.
value picks apparently.
a team which I know they're not on this list because we've gone through basically every team, but a team I do just want to shout out because we've mocked them a lot. Atlanta Falcons. So
Yeah.
Drake London, we talked about lots. Just can't believe they did that, to be perfectly honest. However, I love their day two. Ebiketie early in the second. Troy Anderson, like many will say, a reach, but actually you're still getting him at the end of the second, start of third. I think that's about his value and holds a lot of special teams value in there as well, especially with them having Mariota is a really natural fit. And D'Angelo Malone, a guy who, again, probably from a consensus standpoint, is a slight reach. I thought he was fantastic at the Senior Bowl. He didn't fit what the Lions did at all, so I just don't think he would have been in play for us. But really like him and kind of middle of the third as well.
You know, they did all right, but again, I'm, and it's a trope, but I'm looking at the offensive line that gets the quarterback sacked 50 times a year, and it's not been upgraded. They've not put anyone on there. They continue to neglect one of the most important positions there. It's just like they're thinking, well, we'll get away with it, but you won't. You know, whether it's Mariota this year, whether it's Ridder this year, no, they're going to get hit 50 times. And, you know, it's not good for the longevity of the player long term. And Matt Ryan isn't there anymore. He's a savvy vet who probably saved himself another few dozen hits from the way he plays. A rookie who's, a little more unsure of himself and that is going to get hurt badly. And Mariota's not, he's as mobile as a dump truck. He's not going to go very far. So
it is fair because these guys haven't panned out. But over the last 3 years, they have spent 2 first-rounders on offensive line and 2 third-rounders.
Yeah.
So they have at least invested in it. I agree. I think it's more showing that if you don't take that guy at 8, which I think they should have done, I think you do too, you're not necessarily going to get a guy who you can just plug and play on day 2, because that's what they've struggled with. You saw Jalen Mayfield last year, but they probably don't want to give up on yet, but was a train wreck. So you're not always going to get these starters. Yes, I think you could definitely make an argument that one of those 4 guys would be offensive line, but what the players in isolation they did pick, I really liked.
Oh yeah, in isolation they were good. I just don't think they went after the big needs, but that might be the plan. Whether they've accepted they're not going to be great next year, they'll be drafting high, get better players, then you never know. But
let's just take 10 minutes to just talk about day 3. So obviously we're kicking off in just 6 hours time now already. See you soon, Tom. The Lions are picking at 177, 181, and 217. What do we want to see from the Lions on day 3?
I would like to see us take a developmental cornerback with some high athletic upside. So someone like maybe Tariq Woolen.
I don't think Tariq Woolen's going to be there. Yeah, he's going early today. He's going early. Someone's going to bet on the physical upside.
Let's trade up. Like that would be a good trade up, I think.
I'd package all 3 picks, get as high as I could. I'd maybe throw in a middle one next year, again to get high, and I'd be happy picking just one more guy in this draft at this point. If he's going to be a better guy, hell, double dip at safety, we can get a developmental linebacker or something. That would be my preferred option. If we're going to stick with the picks that we have, though, I mean, you are shooting darts at this point in time, so. I know.
Are there any linebackers on the board, Adam? You think like if you look at the best available linebackers, is there anyone that catches your eye from like the college pod over the last year?
Not to come in and be sort of immediate starters as you were. A lot of the good linebackers have gone now, and that some of the ones were left. I'm not uber keen on.
Mike Rose.
I mean, if Damone Clark sat there and like in the 200s, I'll take him as a red shirt, because again, I'm just throwing away a pick, but I ain't picking him till the 200s. I think maybe the one who I would go for would be, oh God, who's the Oklahoma State guy now? Malcolm Rodriguez. He'd be one of the guys I'd be looking at 177 if he's still there. He is a nasty, hard-hitting linebacker. Someone who you could potentially mold to be really, really good in our system. So we need some heavy hitters. We need some hard tacklers. He'd be the one I'd be having a look at that point. But again, I sort of said yesterday I'd go ballistic if we did any more offense in this draft. But when you're that late on, I think the value, one is to be had at running back. I'd still take a running back. Just you need to always refreshen your room up a little bit. If Devontae Price is still there, I'd be all over him. But the amount of running backs that are still on the board at the minute, we could really get some serious value at this point in time if the board keeps falling and these running backs don't start going. So I won't be beyond that. And then offensive line depth, we need still. So if we took a Gardner tackle, then I couldn't be mad. I wanted starters on defense. We're past that point now. So yeah, Rodriguez as a linebacker. Outside of that, I'll take my running backs and my O-line depth now.
The Ohio State tight end, that Charlie Kohler, do you think that could be a late pick?
Iowa.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be honest. If we want to take a tight end, it wouldn't be Kohler, because obviously I did the little article about like mid-round tight ends, and I looked at Kohler, and he'd just be another receiving option, and that's not what we're looking for. We've got Hawkinson and Wright can do the receiving. We need someone to come in and be a blocker. So for me, if I was going to get a tight end in this class, it would be a blocker like James Mitchell, Jake Ferguson, or Daniel Bellinger. Those are the three I'd be looking at, and going off like the board and what I've seen in mock drafts, at least one or two of them will be there at 177. Obviously, me saying this, I'm going to be at work later. I'll look at my phone when I've pulled a cage of alcohol into the back into the warehouse. Look at my phone, and all three will be gone, and I'll have a little cry because I have an absolute man crush on Jake Ferguson, especially since when I watched his Michigan game, and he shut down our number 2 overall pick for a large part of the game. And then when Wisconsin needed him to get them out the side of their own end zone, he ran a terrific route and made a great catch down the sideline. So if he's there at 177, I will personally leave work, go to Vegas, and run that card in myself.
I think one of the things.
He's...
Sorry.
I mean, yeah, he is right. I forgot about tight end too there, but the tight end market has also been very slow, and the ones that have been going are not necessarily the ones that should be going. I mean, I even think like the likes of Cade Otton's still on there as well. But
yeah, Cade Otton's there, yeah.
Cade Otton's still there, but like I said, James Mitchell's the best blocking tight end there. And even if not, if you want to go on the high development upside physical guys, which we like to do in some cases, you've got even more guys like Chigozie and McConkru from Maryland.
Yeah.
You've got him there as well, and he might slip below some of the others just because purely he's more of a developmental guy and less started ability right away. So, if you came away from 177 and 181 with your blocking tight end 2 and a bit of running back depth, then you've rounded your offense out really nicely. In fairness, take 210, take a swing tackle, take Ryan Vandermark, and actually think the offense would be as close to complete as possible. Really, at this point, apart from Goff.
So there's a couple of picks that I would be interested in seeing. I know that you, Ant, think that Eric Johnson is a UDFA, but hearing Riz bang the table for him so often, I'm kind of resigned to the fact that will be a pick if he's available. I want another safety. We talked yesterday about the fact that when we brought in Kirby Joseph, well, there's a way that we can get all 3 of our guys on the field at one time. Well, if we do, having a 4th one's going to have value then, because no one...
Don't start this argument on the pod.
Well,
we know exactly what argument this is going to descend into when it comes to safeties we want.
Well, so just looking at the board in terms of where we're picking right now, the following guys are potentially available at 177. Della Turniel, Marquise Bell, Veron McKinley, Nick Grant, Smoke Monday, Leon O'Neal, Bubba Bolden. All of those guys could come in and do a job as safety 4. Like,
you're missing a name. And you're deliberately missing a name.
I don't know who you mean, man.
You're missing 2 names.
Yeah, you're missing 2 names. You didn't even say Sterling.
Who? I don't know who that is.
Wow. Ryan's
going to come back.
Who's the other name? I digress, but who's the other name that I missed?
Sterling's there, and Reed Blankenship is
Reed
there.
Blankenship,
well,
yes, of course.
And if anything, he's now the perfect guy to come here because you can develop him without having him as a starter, which I think is what the issue probably is there. Is you don't start him right away, but special teams buzzard. He will come in and play every single special team snap for you and give you plenty there while he develops as a safety. So, he'd be the name at the top of my list now, even above guys like he's got a lot more physical upside than some of these mid-round safety guys who are in there. I mean, Bubba Bolden, no, not for me. Me and Ryan sort of had him listed on our safety list at the start of the college football podcast season, but he just tanked off a cliff, and it's not really done much. I mean, and there's still plenty of other guys there. You got Harvey Peel, the Oklahoma State safety as well. He's really good, and he's been talked about in UDFA territory, which is crazy. You will pick up some very good undrafted free agent safeties without having to spend a pick on one, I reckon, this year. I think that's going to be the thing. We'll see. We will see a safety 4 come from the UDFA list, is my guess.
Yeah, probably true. Right. Any final things you guys want to get off your chest before we wrap up here?
I feel vindicated about Chanel.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I can't believe he fell as far as he did to 103 to Kansas City. It's,
he was this year's Baron Browning, I mean, you remember Baron Browning? who
Yeah, I
just
remember him. Yeah,
Flipped to the Browns. I think it was the Browns at like 108 or something like that. That was crazy. You know, the linebackers just dropped like stones. But that's terrific value to get Leo Chanel there. But I feel sorry for Sam Howell. Sam Howell is not a day 3 quarterback pick. He really is not. And you know, at this point last year, I think Davis Mills had just gone. You know, I'm going to lay my hat on that. I said Davis Mills was the best quarterback outside of the top few who went last year, and I'm utterly justified because he's the only one who's cemented himself as a starter and looks decent. I'll say the same about Sam Howell this year. Outside of Pickett, maybe, and Willis, I don't know. I think he could be better than the pair of them. I'll stick my hat out there and say Howell could be the best guy out of this class, and he's still sat there. And he should not be still sat there.
All right, we'll wrap this up now. Thank you to everyone for watching. We're going to be live again at 4:30 UK time, which is 11:30 Eastern time in the States. Got quite a nice load of guests for you as well, starting off with a red, white, and buffalo blues at 4:45. Dog Pound East, that's Ivan repping the Cleveland Browns at 6:15, all UK time this. Raiders Ryan's going to come on at 7:45. Ian from the UK Ravens at 8:45, and Robson from Jags Across the Pond at 9:45. And then we're going to wrap it all up with a recap show this time tomorrow. So you can catch us later on today or this time tomorrow for those. But just remains for me to thank everyone for watching this show. If you have got up this early, then fair play to you guys. But for now, let's go Lions, one pride.
one pride.